Welcome back to Sledgehammer Horror, guys. I am Ken Sledge, and let's talk horror. Now, today I'm joined by the beautiful Christine Heneise. Christine, how you doing today?
Great, fabulous. How are you doing?
I am doing very well. I am so excited to have you here. But before we talk about the reason you're here, Christine, I would like for the people that don't know you to get to know you a little bit. You are a film, TV, and stage actress, as well as a writer, director, producer, art director, voiceover, and improv artist. You just do a little bit of everything that you possibly can do. And learning that, you studied at the improv with the SNL famed Groundling School in Hollywood. So a lot of improv, a lot of comedy comes from that. When did you know this is what you wanted to do with your life?
Um, I think it was insidious because I remember at 7 years old standing in front of our apartment building in Chicago and recording like little fake commercials next to my bike for Coppertone uh, sun lotion and thinking that one day maybe I might be able to do it for real. The dream kind of hibernated for a little while. I had a family. I was a creative director in Chicago for a number of years, about 30 years. So I was behind the camera, but I never lost the love for the art of creating film.
Mhm.
I directed commercials for a long time in Chicago, and I appreciate both sides. And I think that's what I think it makes me an edgy and creative filmmaker is that I appreciate and understand and respect both sides of the camera.
Right. And like you said, that really does give you a love for both sides. So you're able to work with people a lot easier because you know how it feels to be in their shoes. Um, like I said, and if as if that wasn't enough, you also had Divergent Mind Productions, which fosters and develops projects alongside writers, actors, filmmakers, trying to connect resources to bring films out to the audiences. But most recently, you were seen portraying Lady Bird Johnson in the Oscar-winning Oppenheimer. I don't know if you guys have heard of that film or not, but little film last year, just did okay. Yeah, how was it to be able to be a part of such a huge blockbuster of a film?
Well, let me tell you, it was quite unexpected. I had already been involved with the project to a small degree and found out within a matter of days that Christopher Nolan was considering me for the part of Lady Bird, and I was up against one other person and had a whirlwind interview over a weekend where I was asked to submit everything but my uh, fingerprints and passport uh, to be considered for the part. And it was pretty much just, I think, me stepping out of my own skin and realizing that I could portray this. And I think it was more of me believing in myself first and foremost that I would even consider allowing myself to be considered for this role. And I was just flabbergasted. Got the royal treatment, even for the small degree that I was on screen. If you blink, you might miss it, but it's in the last 30-ish seconds of the film. If you own it on hard media, you can stop it and see me in the film. So, but I consider it no small feat to have even been in that role. I got to work with Emily Blunt and Killian Murphy and Josh Hartnett, and was treated like the first lady that day. It was incredible.
That's amazing. And like I said, I don't care if you're behind the scenes, the part you're still part of this movie and
Yeah.
forever in history. No one can ever take that away from you. You are forever a part of a movie that revitalized cinema. Like people were just so excited to go watch this movie. And we had a Barbenheimer weekend, and um it was just an amazing time for theater and you were a huge part of that and the theater experience for this. I'm just so proud of you that you got to be able to go and do this amazing thing. And it's a dream for a lot of people and you could say that you've done that. You were a part of that. So
Yeah.
um and you have dipped your toes into the water of horror. Guess Who's Dying for Dinner and the student thriller film, is it Equivocal? um
Equivocal. Yeah.
so you've been able to, go out and do a couple things in the horror world. Hopefully, we'll see you get back into the horror world. But right now, Divergent Mind Productions, you're currently working on a feature-length comedy and several other projects. So the best way for you guys to keep up with everything that Christine is doing is by following her on social media. And I have those links down in the description. So make sure you're following her on social media to become a part of her life, become a part of that social media family, and stay up to date on all the amazing things she has coming up for us in the future. So, Christine, in order to, do parts in Guess Who's Dying for Dinner and Equivocal, horror had to start for you somewhere. So now I would like to go back to the past and talk about what it was that got you started in the horror genre, your first horror movie. And Christine, the first horror movie you watched was
The Omen.
what a start to your horror life.
Yeah.
So, do you remember about how old you were the first time you had seen it?
I think I must have been about 10 or 11. I think it came out in the summer of 76. So I would have been 11 and a very innocent, naive 11. If anybody watching remembers the 70s, we were a very protected uh, generation back then.
Yeah, you didn't have
So,
tablets being able to tell you every single thing about the world and ruining your innocence at 4 or 5 years old. So,
no.
um, well, even so, like, it's hard to go from any type of genre of film to jump over to the Omen, especially as a child, because I feel like, especially as children, we try to latch on to what we know. We try to grab onto and we, kind of go with the things that mean a lot to us and the things that we recognize. And that's a child, another child. We can identify with another child. Damien is not a child that you want to identify with. So, do you remember who you were with the first time you had seen it?
So I just had a conversation with my mom today. I wanted to get into her head as to why in the world she thought it was okay to take an 11-year-old impressionable, very soft-spoken child to see The Omen. And we had a conversation. My mom is an actor too. Let's just say she's on a long, long hiatus in Chicago. And she told me, she relayed this memory about her own childhood. And she was in the theater doing a play called The Women. And she was requested by the director that he was going to send her on an audition to for the role of the bad seed at the
Oh,
Pasadena Playhouse. And for some reason, her family life was just not in the right condition for her to make the trip to audition for it. But I realized that is probably the mindset that she was watching that film with, is that she could have played this really evil character,
sure.
and maybe she related to it in some way. But I don't think I received it the same way as she did. And I was pretty scarred when I saw my mom in that light. And after, she had shared that story with me, I was like, yeah, I could totally understand that. But I think the movie was so hyper realistic for me. I have a vivid imagination being a creative, and
Mhm.
could really imagine um and I think, I think that's the beauty of horror movies that feature children, is that um children are so honest in their portrayals on camera. If they're not unaffected actors, and they're really just uh you can see the realism in their eyes, and in the filming process. That's what makes it so scary, is that you can really envision this with very little dialogue, uh that this is real. And I believed it. Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. And like I said, especially when we're at that young, impressionable age, it's hard to, differentiate between fantasy and reality. We see this on screen, so it feels so real to us. And like I said, The Omen is a hell of a way to start. Do you remember what the scene was that affected you the most?
Well, you know, back in the day, we didn't really get a chance to see lots of trailers before a movie. And I don't even recall the trailer itself, but now that I've looked back, if you go online, you can see the trailers for it. But I don't recall seeing it as a child. But it was just very impactful. The nanny jumping off the out of the building window and committing suicide at the strong mental direction of the demon that was Damien. And had no exposure to suicide as a concept up until that point. Didn't really grasp what the depth of that. And I mean, there were many other elements in that movie that were also deeply disturbing, but you know, there didn't have to be gore on the screen to be terrified by that. The finality of that, and the concept that some force could be control your mind.
And she lets us know, she gives out the line.
Look at me, Damien. It's all for you.
That terrible line, and you just know, you're like, oh my god, what am I about to see right now? And these type of movies, I look at this, I look at The Exorcist, Rosemary's Baby, The Bad Seed. Like you said, they didn't need to have a bunch of blood and guts and gore to scare you. They were
Yeah,
scary because they were just, you felt like you were watching something that was just inherently evil, and something that was just beyond the comprehension, especially of a child, of how evil the world can be, and how you get sucked into this evil world of who Damien is. And we know right now in Hollywood, obviously, remakes, prequels are all the rage. They did just release the first Omen. Did you check that out?
I have not checked out the re-release of it. Um, I don't anymore. I don't think I have an affinity for children inhabited by evil.
Mhm.
Um, I think for me it had seen its day. I had never been allowed to see The Exorcist in the theaters, and then when I finally got a chance to um the grand moment that I was going to get a chance to watch it on TV, I chickened out. I said, no, I'm not going to go there.
Right.
So I think I watched like a minor. And, I'm not squeamish necessarily. I can handle actually gore and horror, but there's just something about a child. Um, it's just kind of like, for me, forbidden fruit to, we don't want to see kids murdered on camera.
Yeah.
We don't want to see animals murdered on camera. And
And a lot of
yeah,
people have their triggers, like for me, it's I can't handle sexual assault of any type. Like that for me that's my line. Like once that starts to happen, I'm checked out. I can't, it
yeah.
makes me feel physically sick to see that type of stuff. And so I totally get that. I get that there's a line in the sand that people draw, and we got to respect that, even as horror fans, like that's just something that we all do. So, um, we know that horror started for you with The Omen, Christine, but
Mhm.
I do have a little bit of a curveball here for you. My little
Sure.
buddy Ghostface is here, and he has a question for you. What's your favorite scary movie, Christine? What is your favorite horror movie of all time?
Wow. Um, you know, so suspense for me is more of a draw, and I love the old Alfred Hitchcock movies. Um, I've got to say the lesser visited ones of Alfred Hitchcock, Strangers on a Train,
Mhm.
um, Rear Window, Vertigo. They might not be considered horror. The obvious would be Psycho. Um, And I think when I made the leap into as an adult into horror, I did love seeing Nightmare on Elm Street, the first one, just because it was kind of me crossing the threshold into getting to make my own movie decisions and my own horror movie decisions. So I think it holds a special place in my heart just because of that.
Yeah. And Nightmare on Elm Street and Psycho both, I've said, if you take out the last 5 minutes of both those movies, they're the perfect horror movies. I think they're both great. I hate the endings to both of those films. Um, but like you said, the Alfred Hitchcock catalog that doesn't get a lot of respect. Psycho and The Birds. Then you got movies like Vertigo, Rear Window, Rope, even. Those
Yes, and
are
actually Rope is my all-time, is cinematically, as a director. It's kind of on my bucket list to not necessarily redo Rope, but to utilize the techniques to build a story. I just think it's so masterful, the one shot um Wow. Yeah,
Oh, like Hitchcock was just one of those guys that I feel like was way, way ahead of his time. And
absolutely.
I'm one of those people that think horror is what you make it. I think that horror can be like there's movies that people don't think are horror that I completely think are horror, like Prisoners, the Jake Gyllenhaal, Hugh Jackman movie where their daughters get kidnapped and they're trying to find their daughters. That to me is the epitome of horror. Like that's real life horror. So I'm not one of those I've done episodes of my first horror movie on The Wizard of Oz, on Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory because of how much they scared people. Talking about those flying monkeys or Willy Wonka's song in the tunnel, like
Yes, that one, actually, as a child, I have to totally agree. Watching Willy Wonka, didn't get to watch it in the theaters, but every year that it came around as a child, that was the most horrifying with the chickens, in
oh
when you're in the tunnel and the chickens getting their heads cut off or something like that. Horrifying, absolutely
oh
horrifying.
and that's it's so funny because we talked about those movies and a lot of people are like, why are you doing that? That's not horror. I'm like, man, horror is what you make it. There's not this
Yeah,
definitive, this is a horror movie, this isn't a horror movie. Like horror to me is not like it's a feeling. It's not a genre, really. It's the feeling that you get when you watch certain film. And I love the fact that it can be anywhere from Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory to Saw, and people can get those same type of emotions from those type of movies depending on when they seen them and what they meant to them. So, Christine, I've had a great time talking to you about your first horror movie, your favorite horror movie, and obviously learning a little bit more about you as a human being. But before I let you go, we always bounce back to the same question. We're
mhm.
going to go back to The Omen, and what we're going to do is rank this movie on a skull count. Now, we're not ranking this movie on acting, production, score, direction, nothing like that. We're not being critics. All we're doing is ranking this movie on how much it affected you on your first viewing. So, 0 skulls being not effective, 5 being extremely effective. You can use half and quarter skulls anywhere in the middle. Christine, what would your ranking of The Omen be?
I would have to say, I would say about an 8.5.
Yeah, it's one of those movies that's just like, and like you said, that nanny scene alone is going to stick with you as a child for as long as it possibly can.
Yeah.
So I know I said it at the beginning, guys, but we are at the end of the third act. The credits are about to roll and the curtain's about to drop. But before that happens, make sure you're following Christine on all her social media links. Those are down in the descriptions because, like I said, she's done some amazing things already. She's got a lot more coming down the pipeline. So you're going to want to check this stuff out. You're going to want to be a part of that. So, Christine, please don't go anywhere. I have a couple more questions for you.
Okay.
Um, Everyone else, if you haven't already, please like and subscribe. It does help build the channel more than you know. And follow Sledgehammer Horror on social media. Our links are in the description as well. But until next time, keep talking horror, stay what you are, and we'll see you guys soon.